Today's episode is brought to you by the best store in the universe. Thousands of shirts, but not really. Shop now and support the show at MaddoxRules.com. Welcome to the best debate in the universe. Every debate in the universe, from armrest hogs to gay frogs. With over 4 million downloads, I'm your host, Maddox. With me is the Rear Admiral of Tangents, Ron Babcock.
Thank you.
And moderator in training, Dustin Sussman.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to the show. Guys, amazing show this week. We're going to be debating whether or not comedy has to be funny.
Okay.
Seems like one of those things where the answer's obvious, but it's not until you listen to the debate shitheads that you'll make up your mind, because we're very fucking persuasive. And with us this week is a second-time guest, Dustin Sussman, writer-director. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Maddox. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. So, Dustin, last time you came in, you were promoting your movie, your documentary that you produced, right? Yep. Called Oh, Rick.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, it takes place, as per kind of what we're talking about today, it takes place, a large part of it at the Comedy Cellar in New York City, about a mainstay MC over there called Rick Chrome, and it's sort of redefining success through his eyes and his filter. He's made a living in show business for 40 years, didn't necessarily make it per se, but
made his rent.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to actually make a living doing it, and it's been interesting. We won't get all into it, but like Louis was in the movie and stuff, so it's been kind of an interesting ride, an interesting experience, because the Comedy Cellar in that sort of world is there's obviously other comics in it, like Sarah Silverman, Ray Romano, Jon Stewart and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was here last time we were debating if the Beatles were overrated or not.
That's right. That was one of the most contentious debates we've ever had on the show. So many people weighed in on it.
I think I was gone that week.
You were gone that week, yeah.
How did I do? I thought I did okay.
You did fine, but whatever side you argued was wrong because it was against me.
Right, exactly. Obviously.
I think, you know what, though? I think most people sided with you because you were arguing that they weren't overrated, the Beatles.
Right, but I think the base of it was like even an example of like Helter Skelter influencing metal. It's like you could make those you could kind of make those arguments.
Is there any way for people to watch your movie now, or is it still looking for a home?
No, it's still looking for a home. Like I said, it's sort of, again, not getting full on into it yet, but it's been kind of a, roller coaster of such. It's still in the festival circuit. You can check out the trailer online. It's Oh Rick, but I'm hoping in the next like month or so it'll be on, it'll be digitally streaming.
Is Oh Rick, does it have a punctuation on the end of it?
Yes, it's like, an exclamation point. It's an exclamation point.
Oh Rick!
Yeah.
Rick! Yeah, with an exclamation point. And there's a story behind the story, which I was talking to Dustin before the show started, and I sincerely hope you're able to tell the story because it is fascinating. You guys, sometimes in the process of making art, making movies, making like whatever it is, there's sometimes a story that's just as interesting, if not more so, than the art you're actually creating. And I hope that you're able to tell that story someday, which I think you probably will be in the near future.
It's got to happen. Yeah, I mean, even these past weeks of seeing what happened, these past couple of weeks with Louis, and just kind of seeing it all kind of happen again. I've just been kind of in a weird, unique position. Obviously, I'm kind of a nobody, so it's nobody really knows who I am. So part of it is trying to figure out maybe, just kind of trying to get my story out there, because it has been, from as being a producer, I felt like I hit grand slams, of what I was able to do. It's just as far as the industry is concerned, it just created so many roadblocks for me that, I hope.
Do you guys want to hear a tangent?
Sure.
You know what, Ron? Yeah, I'm in the mood for a tangent.
Okay.
What do you got for us?
This is a fun tangent. I think people are really going to enjoy this. I was at a party, talked to a guy, went, "What do you do for a living?" Right? He edits trailers, movie trailers. And I was like, I've always wondered how come like some movie trailers, like there are things in the trailers that aren't in the actual movie.
Yeah.
And
aren't in the trailer.
They're in the trailer. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. And then I watched the movie. I'm like, where was that like one part? And he's like, oh yeah. So you want to know what happened? And I'm like, yeah, because he was talking about, he worked on Justice League. I guess, so trailer editors get the dailies as they come in. And so they'll be building the trailer as the movie, because the trailer is like, it's like a thumbnail video on YouTube. Like it determines everything. Like so much fucking notes and works goes into the trailer.
Yeah.
It just determines whether or not this movie's going to work. And so they're building the movie. They're building the trailer before the movie comes out. So they'll get the perfect trailer and they're like, good to go. And that'll be way before the movie is actually totally finished and done.
It'll be like a scene that has the title in like somebody actually says the title.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that'll be in the trailer, but it'll never.
And then so they go through all their testing with the movie, and shit will get cut out. And he's like, that's why there's all these funny parts in the Justice League trailer that didn't make it in the final movie because of network notes or whatever. And he went, and he's like, if people want to see that version of the movie, he's like, we would need like another like $15 million because all those shots like didn't get effects put on it.
I was going to say color corrected.
So it's like you'd be watching a movie and it was just like all of a sudden the dude would have a mustache and then like the green screen's behind him. Like, like it wouldn't fucking work. So
it's a crazy schedule too for production because a lot of times you have to produce the trailers so that it's delivered at the same time as the finished product, but you're trying to finish the product at the same time that you're trying to deliver the trailers. So
now, wasn't that a fun tangent?
Yeah, that was a fun tangent. Thank you, Ron. You know what, Ron?
Yeah. Let's check the chat room. Oh my God. Look, Ron, that was the greatest tangent ever. Crazy that someone wrote that.
Crazy. It just like flew off screen.
No. It was,
couldn't get the name of the person who said that.
Yeah, but it was there.
I trust that it was there. And I should mention, guys, if you guys are listening at home, on Saturdays, we do these shows live, so you can tune in live. And sometimes we may be doing them during weeknights at some point. I'll announce those in the future. But if you guys have any super chats in the chat room, thank you guys for the support. But we should talk about the debate this week, which is, does comedy have to be funny? And before we begin, I want to hear everyone's buzzer. Here's what mine sounds like. Dustin, let's hear yours.
Triggered.
And Ron. There it is. If you hear a buzzer from anyone during this debate, that means someone is disagreeing with someone else, or we're just chiming in with an interjection. But before we start this debate, I want to give us the setup, because Dustin, you sent me this article from vulture.com, and it's called How Funny Does Comedy Need to Be? So it's kind of like an interesting philosophical essay about the shift in comedy. And Ron, I'd love to get your feedback and opinions on this too, your insight, because you run in the stand-up circuit, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I want to. I brought this paragraph. I think it kind of summarizes the point of this article. Like post-rock, post-comedy uses the elements of comedy, be it stand-up, sitcom, or film, but without the goal of creating the traditional comedic result, laughter. Instead, focusing on tone, emotional impact, storytelling, and formal experimentation. The goal of being funny is optional for some, or for the entirety of the piece. This is not the same as comedians making dramas or becoming serious actors like we've seen in past generations. These pieces are comedies structurally. Now, there's somebody they talk about named Drew Michael, and you kind of talked about this, Dustin. Who is Drew Michael, and why is this? Why is he being talked about?
So he's a stand-up comic. Again, I don't know a ton about him, but he's I believe a New York stand-up comic, or he might be West Coast. Anyway, but Gerard Carmichael.
He just produced his HBO special.
He produced his HBO special, and basically there was no audience. There was no audience for the special itself, which is obviously a pretty I don't want to use the term revolutionary, but it's definitely a change from what the what the standard has been. So even just that in itself is an interesting.
So he did a stand-up special with no audience. What's the point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, even myself watching it initially, it's tough because I think your palate is used to
there is
set
an
up
audience.
Punchline.
It's just not. There wasn't an audience there, but there's obviously an audience for his special.
There was no live audience. I feel like I've seen shows like that where they don't pump in, like the live studio audience laughter or things like that. Like it's there, but I don't hear it, and it's really unsettling because we're so used to it.
There is a live show in Atlanta. I think. Because Ian Robertson, or there's I've never done the show, but it's basically where comics will put on.
I was just going to bring this up.
Yeah. They put on
I produced one of those for Comedy Central.
Well, you tell it then, since you produce it.
Well, basically what it is they'll do stand up from a different room or a different place, basically with a live audience, and there's a screen in front of them, so they literally have headphones on, so they don't hear any of the laughter.
It's like performing in a sensory deprivation unit, and it's just, it must be the weirdest thing,
because part of it is like, I always equate stand-up comedy to surfing, because every wave is different. You could try to surf each wave the same way. It's never going to be the same thing as an audience. So it's weird, it's interesting to me as a performer where a lot of it you are kind of surfing it and improving based on how the audience is reacting. So something like this with Drew Michael, it's just interesting to me that as a performer, how do you make that work? It's interesting.
I always appreciate when people are like the Raptors testing the fence, just kind of pushing the art form to its boundaries, seeing like what is capable. And part of pushing the envelope is going past it, going too far, and realizing, oh shit, that didn't work. But you don't know where those extremes are unless you're trying to find them.
Well, okay, that's an interesting argument to make, that this guy's kind of like a comedy scientist. But it says here in this Vulture article, Excuse me. It says here in this Vulture article, Drew Michael might be the clearest example, as it used the elements of stand-up, but removed the audience and, in turn, its direct relationship to funniness. However, there are plenty more. There are sometimes funny lines and characters on Atlanta, for example, but more often than not, the comedy is tonal. Now, Dustin, what is your argument this week? Which side of the debate are you going to take? Does comedy have to be funny?
And this is, I do believe that I'm taking the harder, personally, Maddox, the harder of the two, where I'm going to try to defend it. I'm going to try to defend more from the base of that it's comedy evolving, where over the last few years with Netflix the palette has changed, where maybe some of us, we come from more of the old school mentality of what I consider what we would probably consider real comedy, where your average comedy fan wasn't necessarily into comedy until the last number of years, where these specials on Netflix have really kind of come to fruition and hit like a zeitgeist level, where I still believe that comedy was kind of more of a niche thing, but now it's so popular that sometimes it's like it's kind of out of your hands, you know what I mean, in terms of how it's going to evolve. So yeah, I'm gonna argue that it's okay for these things to change and evolve.
So, Dustin, I got to do one of these because it's incorrect. Shitty argument right out the gates because, again, I disagree with it. And by definition, it makes it shitty. So, yes, comedy has to be funny. Otherwise, it's not comedy. Mm-hmm. When we start to blur the lines of dramas and comedies or dramedies or whatever, guys, pick one. If it's equal parts both, I'm going to say it's not. It's not and a good example I like to think of is Schenectady, New York. Who's the guy? Kaufman. Charlie Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Kaufman, brilliant screenwriter, brilliant writer. He made this movie, and he was tasked with doing a horror movie. And he thought, well, what's scary to me? Well, what was scary to him are things that are out of human control that affect us all. Things like cancer and like kidney disease and horrible ailments that you can't really control. And you watch this movie where his life slowly spins out of control, and it's horrible and tragic and depressing by the end of it. But the first half of the movie is funnier than most comedies I've seen. Mm-hmm. It's so well done, and there's a lot of tonally, funny elements. There are there's comedic relief, and there's comedic elements, but I wouldn't call that movie a comedy.
Well, I do agree with you there that it's, I was just talking to another comedian about this recently, where, there's a lot of dramas, like even like Scarface, like there are some really funny things in Scarface, sure, but you wouldn't walk, you don't walk away from it. Like Goodfellas, there are some hilarious moments, in Goodfellas, but you wouldn't necessarily, call that a comedy. But I think that's sort of what's happening now in terms of our palette of, kind of how we do things. But I feel like with comedy, though, we do toe the line of the themes that people talk about in stand-up, right? Or these, talking about these big, subjects. Obviously, the Hannah Gadsby Nante special, made these huge waves recently.
Well, who explain that? Who is Hannah Gadsby and what?
Hannah Gadsby, I believe she's the Australian female comic who, she made waves recently of her special where she's gay, and part of it was, talking about that she did want to be self-deprecating. I mean, she was saying basically she was going to quit, this is going to be her last special,
Right.
And to be honest, I think it kind of came out of it being more of a TED, felt like more of a TED Talk than a stand-up comedy special.
Yeah, that's what people were saying.
Right, which I have to say this, out of all the things we're arguing, that part of it for me, I can't personally get down with that, especially from the self-deprecating standpoint, because I do believe that the best comedy comes from that, but it did make waves in terms of, again, I just feel like the palette is changing out there, and isn't it really up to audiences? Isn't it really their choice, and it's definitely the most talked about special. Again, it's not my, cup of tea personally, but look at the effect it's having.
Okay, Dustin, this is a really interesting and important point, okay? Isn't it up to the audiences? Yes. Absolutely. It is up to the audience. So if you tell a joke, right, and nobody laughs, it bombs, essentially. Is it funny? Well, by definition, I would argue, no, it is not, right? Because nobody laughed. And
that night.
Well, you could say the same thing about Andy Kaufman. When he started, people not understanding.
Right.
Because there are, I heard stories about Larry David and, Mark Maron earlier in their career, it was just like yelling at the audience, and, sure, people would get up and leave. But, at the time, they might have seemed nuts then, but,
Right, but that's like, so I wouldn't call that necessarily comedy until it's gotten to the point where it's established enough that people recognize it as comedy. So for example, when an artist begins his or her art and they're learning, every little piece of shit they put on canvas isn't art. It's just a practice. It's a sketch. It's whatever you're doing to chisel your piece of art that eventually people will recognize as art. So the thing with Andy Kaufman is he had a very clear and very strong intent, and he had that intent all throughout his career. And it was only until after the curtain was pulled back a little bit and people peeked behind and realized, oh, there is some intent behind it. The example I like to give is with modern day trolling. And this is an article I've started writing a while ago. I haven't finished it. I'll probably make a video about this at some point. But everybody uses the word troll as kind of a shield, as kind of like a haha, just kidding, I got you. It's like, no, you're using that word after the fact because you got called out for saying something unfunny and heinous. It's not funny. Your intent wasn't to be funny. Your intent was to be cruel and to hurt people. And it's only after the fact, right? So what evidence is there when somebody says something horrible? Because for the example I want to give is Pogo. There is a musician on YouTube named Pogo. And he has the name of his channel is called Faggotron. And someone sat down with an interview recently with Pogo, and they said, "Why is your channel called Faggotron?" And he actually, this was a year and a half ago. In this interview, he said, it's because I hate gay people. I think that they are abhorrent, they're terrible people, and he fist bumped the Pulse nightclub massacre. Well, finally, this video came out of him talking about this, and everybody kind of gave him this huge backlash, and of course, he came out and his defense was, oh, I was trolling, I was just joking, I'm actually bisexual. So it's hard to tell if you don't have a body of work whether or not your intent was to quote troll or to try to be humorous or to try to be edgy and shocking. And I would argue this: if your goal is to try to be edgy and shocking and use the N-word in comedy, oh cool, wow, you're so fucking edgy, you have to have earned it. You have to have a body of work that demonstrates to you that is your intent. Picasso's a great example. Picasso, when he was a child, mastered realism before he moved on to surrealism, before he moved on to impressionism. Any of those forms that Picasso experimented with, he has a body of work to support his talent and skill. So people can say, okay, Picasso's clearly talented. This is an artistic and aesthetic choice rather than an inability or lack of talent. And that's the problem today with most comedians and people who are trying to, quote, tell edgy humor and jokes and things like that. If you can't quite tell, you're not good at it, and you might not be it.
Triggered.
What?
Well, speaking of comedic timing, it's interesting because I feel the same way. You could say, like you were saying, even something about music, right?
Yeah.
Is the internet? I'm sorry. It's like I worked for a website called iFilm, which was like the first.
I remember
having stuff on iFilm.
So my street cred on video content on the internet goes deep. And in that respect, there's
I work for iFilm, motherfuckers.
I know, iFilm, son. No, but in that respect, it's like there's so many things that have changed where, I hate to even say this, but it's talent. The definition of talent, as far as the internet is concerned, that's totally up for debate on what's talent and what's, because for me, coming from more of an old school mentality, if I see somebody like, who's a good example, like, I didn't bring it up, but somebody like Nicki Minaj. Personally, I don't think she's talented at all in terms of somebody maybe like a Whitney Houston or somebody that I can see, that really made their bones, exactly what you're talking about, that, if it's Aretha Franklin coming up through the church and whatever, and, evolving into the artist that she is. The thing is now with the internet, I feel like it's totally up for debate, especially based on the fact that the audience is the one, they control that at the end of the day. And I actually think they're kind of, and again, I don't necessarily agree with it, but they are sort of redefining comedy. They're redefining what they think is funny and interesting. I mean, I see videos, even on Instagram, as a platform for comedy, everything lives in like 4 bars. You know what I mean? So it could just be like a quick Instagram video, and that could be to somebody, just that little thing could get 1 million views on something just very short and sweet. That, internet comics really drive me crazy personally, where they take like a set up punchline joke that's like 50 years old, where it's like, what if guys acted like women when they went out on the out on the town?
Holy shit, what if they did though?
Exactly. I know, for real. But in that respect, a 10-year-old kid that has an iPhone doesn't necessarily know the full history of comedy. And they don't really give a shit.
Exactly. That's why hack stuff works.
Right.
Because there's always a new generation who don't know that it's a played out premise. It's new to them. So they're like, this is amazing.
I would argue that memes are exactly that. It's a hack format. It's people. Why memes are so popular is because unfunny people can take a formula, can take a template for a joke, right? And just plug in different variables and kind of make something sort of kind of funny.
But then there are still some people, it's like anything. Most stuff we consume from a creative perspective, most movies, most books, most music, most art, most everything is bad. Most memes are bad, but there's a small percentage of each of them that are truly fucking incredible, that are just amazing, and that stand the test of time, and that will be talked about, and we'll move on to the next generation. But most everything of everything is kind of garbage because people are doing it at different stages of their career, and you don't always get better doing stand-up. There's a crescendo you have, because then you have these old stand-up legends, have these panels. I remember, I forget the one guy's name, but he was going on about Bluetooth technology, and it's I thought he was talking to himself, and you just saw Jerry Seinfeld on stage being yeah, it's we all basketball players don't just get better forever. You have a peak time, and then everything you make after that is kind of shit.
Well, what were you going to say, Dustin?
Well, no, the only thing I was just going to say to that that's interesting is it's even in the Vulture article that they talk about how when comedy specials first started becoming big, even in the 70s, a lot of those old school guys from the 60s looked at them as if they were crazy releasing their material. It's you could make a living off this stuff for the next 10 years. So as far as the internet's concerned, it's Twitter, obviously, over the last 10 years has become a platform for...
It's causing people to pump more stuff out.
Right.
And because people are spending less time on their specials, because there's with people like Louis or Bill Burr, where they're doing a new special every year,
or every 6 months,
and it's setting a benchmark for other comics. So other comics I got to put out a new album, and it's you're getting stuff that might not be as polished. But if your point is that comedy should be funny, then there's a good chunk of stand-up specials that aren't comedy.
Correct.
But that's my personal opinion, and it's difficult talking about stand-up with my friends who aren't stand-ups because here's how I liken it. My sister just sent me, oh my God, she just texted me. She's like, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I was like, yeah, I know so-and-so. And oh my God, so-and-so special is hilarious. And I just had to be yeah, it's super great. And if I could stop one person from doing comedy, it would be so-and-so.
Really?
I just feel it's just awful. But that's my opinion, because I always tell people, if you're really into wine, if that's your thing, and all you do is drink wine, you love wine, and I come over to your house with a bottle of $2 Chuck from Trader Joe's, you'd be like, oh my God, thank you. That's so gross, because you're into wine. That's the thing with me, stand-up. I've seen so much stand-up. I have very specific stand-up taste. I'm a stand-up snob, so I'm not going to like what you like. But it's all subjective.
Sure.
So yeah, I haven't seen Nanette yet. I'm excited to watch it because it obviously had an impact. Based on the responses of the chat room, you guys don't give a shit about it. But it's who the fuck cares? If it impacted you, it impacted you. I can't just go up to you and be like, actually, well, technically it's not comedy. It's if comedy is, I think comedy more than it's supposed to have it can make you laugh or it can have an impact. I don't know, who am I to judge? If you liked it and you thought it was funny, then fucking A, good for you.
I mean, you can make the argument too. It's you go back and watch some of Richard Pryor's older specials, which I still find funny, but sometimes, obviously because it's aspects of it are dated. Sometimes I'm not laugh out loud funny, but obviously most of the stories are so personal and so raw that even in something like that, you could make that argument, even at the time where, somebody like Richard, I mean, there's old records like Craps where he's talking about sucking a guy's dick. Again, at the time, I mean, that's some crazy ass shit to do. I think that was 1972 or, whatever.
This guy's sucking a dick.
Seriously, I mean, I'm just saying, it's grew up in his grandmother's brothel. I mean, but at the time, people may have argued, the Milton Berles of the world, this isn't
But why do people get so fucking fired up about stuff? Let's say, Nanette comes out. This has all come down to Nanette, and people come out, and everyone gets so fired up about it. I'm like, you don't like it. you don't gotta watch it.
Don't watch it,
What's
right.
what's the big like? Why do you give such a shit? Like, do you not want it to exist for other people who like it?
That's the thing, and that's where like
you can not like a movie and just go on with the rest of your life.
Sure.
Like, we spend so much fucking time, energy, and effort into shitting on stuff we don't like.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, just fucking like the stuff you like.
Could I say something real quick, Maddox? I'm sorry. And I think that's a great point. And this is kind of an overarching thing, even within the Louis conversation, is over the past couple of years of how serious we're taking comedy now. I'm just saying, even for example, the Louis news last week, it was on the top of Huffington Post almost the entire day.
Crazy, because when I started comedy like 15 years ago, it was not cool.
Right.
We were talking about this before the fight. In comedy, you're right now, it's fucking cool, and it's
Cooler than
making
it's ever been.
like headline news on the BBC. Like,
Right.
it's like reaching international standards.
So, and that's what I'm getting at, that it's like from a level of like, it's like a politician, what they're saying is as much as a politician. So that's where like this weird gray area is happening, that it's, we prop artists up on a fucking pedestal, and, it creates this sort of level of idol worship that, you love those artists so much. I mean, for me, like, for example, Bill Hicks is probably my favorite comic of all time, just from a personal level, because he was such a personal artist that, yeah, you become so sensitive. If somebody says something negative about it, you want to protect them. So that's what's interesting, that we're taking it so seriously.
Oh, yeah, people take it personally.
That it's borderline not funny. That it doesn't matter if it's funny or not. It's just...
Correct.
Yeah.
Speaking of, taking it personally and some funny comments, we got one in the chat room says, "I'm so glad Taylor's gone. I hated that guy." And the person who said it is Taylor Nikolai.
Oh, man.
Yeah, welcome back, Taylor. Couldn't stay away. We know you couldn't stay away. But anyway, back to the point of comedy. So I would argue that comedy has to have two elements, okay? And the first is intent. The intent of the person telling the quote joke or making the comedic form. Because let's not reduce comedy to just one form. It's not just like set up punchline. It's not just a joke like that. Some jokes sometimes take years for the payoff. There's inside jokes I've set up inside jokes that won't be funny for people until probably about 2-3 years from now, and they're going to be so fucking funny when people get the punchline, but it's not ready yet. And it's like, it's still in the oven. It's got to bake a little bit longer,
Okay. The long bake.
Yeah, exactly. And I put inside jokes in almost everything I do. Guys, people used to come to my website and look at the source code of my website, because there were tons of jokes I put in there that I just commented out. No one would ever see that except for nerds who were looking through the source code. Even on the website, madcastmedia.com, I've worked with Lord Matthew. Lord Matthew has inserted jokes like that in the same tradition. There are little inside jokes and Easter eggs and things like that. That's funny. There's intent to be funny. But then ultimately, intent also has to have execution at some point. If you try to make a pie over and over and over again, and it just sucks, you're not a pie baker. You're just not. Move on, try something else, do something that you're actually good at that people can then say, yeah, that's what you do. It's like a writer, right? Dustin, Ron, how many people in this industry, how many people do we know personally who call themselves writers who don't write? There's so many. Yeah. Like, if you're not doing it, you're not it. I don't know what to tell you.
But that's an interesting argument, because I can't remember the guy's name, but this happened a long time ago, where obviously you had a lot of internet comedians coming up. And what I mean by an internet comedian is somebody sitting in front of their camera, and you know what I'm talking about, just doing the jump cut, jump cut.
Right.
At the time when I was doing stand-up, when I would see certain people doing that and them considered comics, and then they have 1 million followers, 500,000 subscribers, whatever it is, you're sitting there and you go, well, this isn't comedy, because they're not in front of an audience right now. You got to get up there and eat your balls. But again, I'm being an old fart technically by saying that.
Yeah. You're just not adapting to this new model where they're like paying their rent through being funny for a living.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would argue. So that's some like gatekeeping shit that I'm not on board with, because I would argue that it's the same thing with people who criticize a music act or a music band for not being, quote, talented, because, some other band that they hold to some orthodox standard, it's like, oh, they're the fucking gold standard, they're so talented. Well, I would argue that whatever is popular, right, by definition has some modicum of talent or appeal in that genre. So Britney Spears, for example, not a fan of her music. I don't like her. I don't like her art. I mean, not her personally. I don't know her, but like I don't like her art. But I cannot argue that she's not talented because in her genre of pop music, she's one of the most she's one of the most popular in the world, and everybody is paying for her music. Everyone likes her music. So who am I to say that's not music or that's not talented? If you're going just by talent, everybody should listen to Mozart all the time. He's the most talented musician in history, or maybe Beethoven, and that's all we would ever listen to. But talent, again, like Ron was saying, it's subjective. Like the expertise with which a joke is crafted, people could argue Mitch Hedberg is super talented.
Well, it's like, I don't know. It's like some people are talented in shit I don't give a fuck about. Like, when you were playing me that Fortnite, like, dude.
Yeah, Nick 830.
Dude, and he was just
Nick 830.
Love him.
And he was just like unloading like shot after shot. And I just was like, and to me, he was like putting all these buildings up. I was like, this is what it looks like when video games are broken. Like, I thought there was something wrong with the screen. It's like, yeah, I get that guy's talented at shooting someone who doesn't exist or digitally. I don't give a fuck though. Like, Ron, you know what I mean? Like, I don't. It's like, oh, like, congratulations. Good for you for like making this into a living, like attaboy. But like, I don't care.
See,
about that.
Can you not recognize the raw talent?
I can't recognize how long it takes to get good at that, and because I know people who've gotten good at those kind of games, and I also recognize the fact that there will come a day of reckoning where they'll look down and go, "What have I done with my life?"
Yeah, what they've done is earn $50,000 to $100,000 a month with their life, Ron.
They really making?
They're making crazy money.
Right. Maddox and I were just talking about this. I just worked E3, and
back in my day,
I know
I used to shoot people.
Well, that's what's so nuts. I work a lot of video game stuff, and I just worked E3, and it's like I had Ninja, was one of the people we had on the show, and at the end of the show, I see exactly. I mean, it's only like the Michael Jordan of video, of like Fortnite gaming, but
it's like what you name yourself when you're 12. My name Ninja, pirate robot.
But I got a video. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I got a video for my nieces and my nephew of him, basically being like, "Hey guys, what's up? Wish you were here, blah 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 blah." And seeing their reaction, it would have been as if what I was telling Maddox is in 1987, Michael Jackson got on the camera like, "Hey Maddox, what's up? Really love you, whatever." Just because I don't understand it, just because we don't understand it. Yeah. Even when you were talking about talent, it's like the little pumps and the little Uzi Verts and
that's
all those,
is when you realize, like, I remember meeting my buddy's kid. And I was like, she's like, "Where do you live?" I was like, "I live in Los Angeles." And she's like, "Do you ever run into?" And she just listed all these YouTube stars. And I was like, I mean, I think the one guy I ran into once, she was like, "Oh," and she like lost her mind. Yeah. And then I realized at that moment, YouTube and the success of all these people, and mostly of the movie industry, is pretty much comprised of people who are like 8 to like 16.
Yeah.
Like all the movies, like that's who goes and sees movies, is these like basically teenagers.
Have you
like
ever seen little kids what they watch now? Like usually, like with I have friends that have kids.
I watch it.
A lot of the time, it'll just be some, obviously it'll be like, Minecraft or whatever, but in terms of what they're interested in, it's just it's just totally changing.
My nephew, he was like, I went to visit him, and I only get to see him like once a year. He's like, "Hey, Uncle Ronnie, do you want to do Minecraft stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Actually, I would love to do Minecraft stuff. I've never done Minecraft stuff." He's like, "Okay." And so then we end up like, he turns on the iPad and I'm like thinking we're going to play Minecraft, and he ends up pulling up a video, and then I just watch him watch a video about a dude playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Should we play Minecraft?" He's like, No. This is it right here.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And I didn't realize that was even a thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that guy was obviously talented at what he does.
Yeah.
I'm just the old fart who doesn't realize that that's entertaining.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're fucking up, Ron.
Or is it possible? Is it possible that there is no either or definition of what is and what isn't comedy? It all comes down, if there's an audience for it, well then guess what? It's fucking comedy for them.
Because success overrules. At the end of the day, success will overrule all of it.
Hey, speaking of overruling, real quick, Ron, you got us back on track. Okay, you're the tangent officer. You're on thin ice.
You guys want to hear about the one time I farted in a theater?
Sure. Too late, Ron. We're back on track already.
Now we're talking about people left.
So we're on the same fucking page, because if you're not successful at comedy, you're not a comedian.
Right.
You're not fucking funny. No one thinks you're making comedy. You're trying. Okay, can we distinguish between trying and success? Can we stop blurring that fucking line?
Can we But at the same, success is not something you just get to and stay at forever. It's not a fucking club that you get in and you're like, welcome to Success Club. It's like you're there for a little bit.
Well,
and then you fuck up and they're like, bro, you gotta leave.
Ron, the only thing that to me, a good example again is the internet, because things have a longer shelf life on the internet. It's more of an unlimited shelf life where it could be something. There's so many things, again, being early to the internet and YouTube, that I was into years ago, that somebody will send me a video. I'm like, this video is 8 years old. But it doesn't matter.
I am the poster boy for that shit. So I have been writing for 21 years. This is a long fucking writing career. I started when I was like fucking 15, 16 years
Whenever
old.
you say it like that, I always just imagine you in a room alone, just constantly like, oh, fuck, what else can I fucking come up with?
Yes, but a coffee shop.
That has free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, there's Wi-Fi and people around, so I don't like get too distracted with my bullshit. But yeah, Ron, it's a very it's not the most social of careers. But anyway, so I've been doing this for since when I was 15, 16 years old, right? When I started. So I have writing currently online that you can go read that I wrote when I was in high school. And that writing has to stand the test of time because people find it today and they're like, well, what the fuck is this weird
Because Maddox then has to be Maddox now.
Exactly. And some of my fans have even turned on me because they're like, oh, Maddox, you changed, man. Yeah, dipshit. Over the course of 20 years,
it's like it's going to happen.
You know what else changes? Fucking everything.
Yeah.
Everything changes. We don't even have fucking World Trade Centers anymore. You still talk about that every fucking day? You go up to the 40th floor of the World Trade Center? You can't because it's fucking gone.
Right.
Shit changes, dipshit. You adjust and react to society around you just like everybody does. Jokes I told like 10, 11 years ago aren't holding up because guess what? Over the course of a decade, things change.
Become dated.
Yeah, I'm super glad that there's a lot of my stand-up from my first 10 years of comedy that is not online.
Yeah.
That existed in the moment and then disappeared because there are certainly a lot of jokes that I am definitely not proud of.
Yeah.
You know?
The shit, I wrote my book, the first book, The Alphabet of Manliness. My express goal, and I told this to my editor, is I want to write a timeless book. I want to write a book, and it was so difficult to write because my website is more topical. I talk about things that are current. I do Star Wars reviews, and I talk about things in pop culture and things that are trending and memes and things like that. I can't write about any of that shit in a book because it's going to be dated. So I set out with the express goal of writing that book to be a timeless piece of humor. And I went back and read it recently, at like parts of it, and it does not. There's parts that absolutely do not hold up. There's jokes in there that I don't even get. I referenced Pamela Anderson. Why would I fucking reference Pamela Anderson? I don't fucking know. I referenced a Nintendo DS game that I don't even know if I own anymore. Like I referenced Castlevania Harmony of Despair on Nintendo DS. A very small, very minor game. Couldn't have sold more than 100,000 copies. And I guarantee the intersection of the Venn diagram of people who own that game and people who own my book is a slip, maybe like 3,000 people. So congratulations, you 3,000 people who get that joke. I don't even fucking get it anymore. There's shit that just doesn't hold up. And you have to adapt and change with time. So I think holding that up to the same standard as like comedy from today is a fallacy. You're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing everyone a disservice.
Well, it's interesting too to see things that like one of my favorite examples is Bill Burr, the Philadelphia incident concert. You know what I'm talking about? For people that haven't heard, I'm sure a lot of people have now. Is basically there was an Opie and Anthony show that was going on in Philly at this outdoor venue, and it was a complete shit show. Like Don Morera got booed off stage, and basically Bill Burr goes out there and completely just fucking destroys the entire crowd.
Just shits on the audience to the point where they're booing him, and then by the end of him, they kind of like him. It's on YouTube. It's a really good watch.
It's easily
trying to put Bill Burr on the map in the larger consciousness.
Exactly right. Where
because it was just no fucking fear.
And it's one of, I mean, for me, as far as comedy goes, it's just like it makes my heart warm. But even in that respect, where it's people, I remember when when that thing came out 10 years ago, but it just over time, it just gradually just snowballed and snowballed. And it's funny what Ron said. To me, Bill Burr is like, in terms of working comics today, personally, he's my favorite comic working today. And it's just interesting that it took, it just takes people, again, that bigger audience now finally kind of catches on, where I feel like, well, I was into this 10 years, into this 10 years ago, like typical hipster ass over here. But, I was into this before anybody or whatever. But again, sometimes that larger audience, it's really up to them of how, these things kind of take on a new life,
One thing about, how you wrote a book about not using topical humor.
Yeah.
There is an element of that in the LA stand-up scene, and there's a bunch of shows, and they're hostel shows.
What do you mean?
They're shows at hostels. Where,
at hostels.
At hostels. There was one in Hollywood, there's one in Santa Monica, and they're the weekly shows where you go and you perform for a bunch of foreigners who are just in town to see the Hollywood sign and go to the beach and whatever. And let me tell you, that will, you go through your jokes and you realize real quickly how many of your jokes rely on not only pop culture references, but pop culture references from this country that you need to get, local street references, names of movies. And like, you just go through your acting, you're like, oh my shit, none of my shit translates.
None of it works. Yeah.
But you know what does translate? Relationship stuff.
Relationship stuff.
Bar none. That's the one thing that always goes over great.
Religion stuff. Translates food stuff, cultures. So that's something I'm very conscious of too. Like on this podcast, I intentionally try not to talk about things that are local because there's people in Germany, and as you'll hear in just a minute, I got some voicemail from Great Britain today, and we have international listeners. We have
a different culture, Great Britain. It's amazing that this podcast even translates.
Oh, this is funny. I titled this voicemail too, "The Most British Caller in the Universe." You'll see why in just a minute when we get to that. But real quick on the topic of comedy. So where do you draw the line? If just because somebody labels something comedy doesn't make it comedy. Just because somebody labels something, a troll, I was trolling, or satire, doesn't make it satire. And that's one that's a sore spot for me. Like the label of satire.
Oh, people hide behind satire fucking much.
Yeah, they use the satire shield.
They use satire, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's just not. You're just using a $5 word to be a dickhead.
Exactly. And you don't know what the definition of satire means, and that's why people use it so much.
They just know the words Modest Proposal and Jonathan Swift, and that's like it.
They don't even know that. They don't even know what they're saying. They the point of satire is you're supposed to use sarcasm or humor to make a point. Okay, that's what satire is. So when
point is that you're gay. that's what it comes down to.
So if somebody says like the N-word, they're like, oh, it's satire, but it's like, well, what's your point? Like South Park got away with it in an episode where Stan's dad, what's the guy's name? Stan Marsh?
Rick, no,
Scott, Kyle's dad, whatever. Yeah. He was on Wheel of Fortune, and he was trying to solve the final puzzle.
Naggers.
And it's and the clue was these type of people are annoying, and the letters on the board were N blank GGERS.
And he's just like looking around, like
he's like, "Can I say this?" And he just says the N-word. Right there, right on fucking, and it was aired on Comedy Central. Nobody bat an eye because they earned it. They were making a point. That episode was so fucking brilliant. It was pure satire.
The answer is naggers.
Naggers was the answer. Those are annoying people. And then it said something about him. It said something about us. It said something about culture and just being able to air that word on TV. And it was like such a brilliant episode. It spoke so much to so many people, and they earned the right to say that. They didn't just come by and do a little drive-by like, N-word, and then just like, oh, it's satire. Here's my satire shield. You don't understand what satire is. And the reason people don't question satire more critically is because too few people understand what it truly is.
I think satire also it's kind of a mean form of humor because the whole way it's funny is that there are some people out there who don't get the joke. So it's a humor that's based on exclusion rather than inclusion.
Oh, about satire?
Yeah.
Well, again, I would argue that if people can't tell, you're not good at it. And maybe you should stop.
But see, this is where we're getting into this territory where, and again, as far as like getting back to like the debate, the side of the debate that I'm on is, again, the audience, the palette of the audience is changing. Where of what we're talking about, those even people that obviously South Park's a huge show, but again, from our generation of how we were able to see, again, pre-internet, how comedy evolved up to this point, right?
Right.
And in my opinion, I always felt as once YouTube became sort of this huge platform. It used to take work to be into shit back in the day. You guys know this. If it was a CD or a VHS tape, whatever it was, it took work to like be into those things.
You had to get a ride from your mom to go to the mall.
Totally.
Dig up the whatever.
I had to drag my mom to Heads Together Cult Video Store to rent Evil Dead 2 when I was 13 years old. That was a big moment.
Yeah, do you know how hard it was for me to find Clerks when it first came out?
Right.
And like getting the one video store that had that, and then watching it when my mom and dad weren't around. because there's a bunch of shit in the movie that.
So we've been able to see these things evolve. Literally to truly see it evolve over time. Once YouTube came along, it became this sort of like even field, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're kind of getting at of sort of what the definition of comedy, what comedy is and what's funny. Again, I just think there's such this shift that I want to make these arguments as sort of a comedy purist, but because everything's changing so much, it's the audience is basically redefining what comedy is at this point and what is funny.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like, in a weird way, I feel like the debate is not that it's unnecessary, but it just doesn't matter because the audience is going to determine what it is.
Yeah, the audience is going to determine what it is, but I think even within that frame, even within that context, the audience's determination is ultimately what matters, because there is no such thing. You can't take comedy, from Earth and then shoot it out into space, and an alien will recognize that as comedy. They will like, well, what the fuck is this, and why do you guys like this? And you explain to them, it's like, well, humans have this emotion called laughter and joy.
Why did you say it like that? Why did you say humans? What?
Because I'm speaking to aliens, Ron.
Yeah, man.
But why are you changing the way we talk to speak to them?
Oh, no.
Human.
Oh, I'm not ready to talk
I am
about...
a human. And they're like, a human? Yes, a human.
A human from Earth. We got a couple super chats real quick. We got two from Pavage Babin. One for $5. He says, I think it's fair to shit on Nanette. When I watch comedy special, I expect it to be funny and not an hour-long political speech. A fucking man, I'll give you that.
Yeah, but you don't have to keep watching it.
That's true. But we're not talking about, like, nobody's forcing him, but he wouldn't consider that comedy, right?
Well, he doesn't consider that comedy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either.
Guys,
So
I feel like
I've seen most of it. And
the last thing people want is a straight white male having a goddamn opinion about Nanette. Like, nobody gives a shit what I think.
Not the last thing.
And
I
so
fucking want that all day long.
So I haven't watched it yet purposely because I almost don't. I don't. It's like Avatar. Like, I don't want to have an opinion on it. Like,
You haven't seen Avatar?
I've never seen Avatar.
Why don't you want to have an opinion on it?
Because everybody was just going balls deep on Avatar when it came out. I will watch
it now.
I will watch Avatar in a very specific circumstance, only if it's showing on a plane. I want to watch it on the smallest screen possible.
Just to be the exact opposite way that
to be
the director
a big
said.
Fuck you to the director.
Yeah.
You know, Ron, I'll give you that. There's a comedian that Ron and I know named Eliza Skinner, and she had a tweet recently that went viral that just spoke to me. She said, you don't have to have a public opinion on everything. A fucking men. I'll give you that. And Ron, congratulations for not having an opinion on Avatar.
But I do agree. But I totally agree with that, especially from the Nante standpoint. Because again, me personally, when the parts that I watched, yeah, I had a problem with it. In terms of it being comedy and how it became more of a confessional than anything else.
Oh, you're talking about Avatar?
No.
No, Nanette.
Oh,
Nanette. Yeah.
I was gonna be like, yeah, it was like Avatar.
She did that. She did, like, okay, I'm a comic. When you go do a special, you do your act for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it's not like she did that. That was the first time. She did that act a lot, I'm assuming, before the show. And she did that for audiences, and audiences obviously were digging it because she decided to be her special. So, like,
yeah, but then could Obama go around and be like, oh, here's my comedy special. It's just a speech. Like
Henry Rollins did it for a long time.
Yeah, that's his whole fucking career.
Wink, wink.
It's just one of those things where, like, obviously, like, I guess what, like, is it the fact that you don't think comedy should make you uncomfortable?
No, I think that comedy, some of the best comedy is stuff that challenges us and our expectations and assumptions about life and society. I think that's some of the best comedy. That's why Bill Burr was so, or not Bill Burr, Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks was so.
But I guess that's what I'm getting at of where we're at now. If we take it so seriously, and they become these cultural mouthpieces that I just feel like it's getting to this level now that I think that's why redefining comedy and saying does it need to be funny or not. I feel like that's why these things are happening now, because we've given comics as artists so much weight.
Well, we've got a super chat in the chat room from Pavich Babin. He says, once Logan Paul came around, he made comedy not funny. For $5, thank you, Pavich Babin. So Logan Paul, if you guys aren't familiar, is the guy, some people would say douchebag, who went to the suicide forest in Japan and made the video where he had a reaction to finding a dead body. And a lot of people found it deeply and grossly offensive. It's because I think he made light of it. He disrespected the entire, I mean, on so many levels, the Japanese culture. When he went there, he made a follow-up video where he was just going around being an asshole to everyone in Japan. And then people compared that to Jackass, because in the first Jackass movie, I believe, the first or second one, they went to Japan and they were jackasses to everybody out there. But it was funny because they have the body of work to do it. They're trained comedians, a lot of them. They knew how to make comedic things without just looking like a jerk or an asshole to people in Japan. Whereas Logan Paul went there like some loudmouth idiot, sassing off people, disrupting their business, causing problems, and nobody thought it was funny except for maybe his like 8-year-old fans.
And that, right, it's like they like dub it funny, where it's like,
I like the phrase trained comedian, because that makes you think that they're in some sort of dojo.
I've had friends who
shut up. Fat guy walks into a bar and punchline. Ow!
Well, that's an interesting. Okay, this is a quick tangent. Good job, Ron. Back off track. This is an interesting tangent because I do have friends who've taken comedy classes. They do have comedy. So, what do you think? Do you think comedy is something that can be trained or can be taught?
Listen, I get this question all the time about comedy classes. If you want to do comedy and you need a class to get off your ass and write 5 minutes of stand-up or to give you some sense of community so you feel safe, then you take the goddamn class. I don't give a shit. If whatever gets you going. I know some of the funniest comedians I know got started off in a class. The problem is don't stay in the class.
Right.
You have to grow out of the class, because what happens is that'll give you the community, and the teacher will be like, oh, hey, you're not ready yet. You're not ready to go.
Yeah.
Because the teacher has a vested interest in you paying $300 every 8 weeks.
Of course.
But if you need a class to get started, take a class. There's no shame in taking an improv class. I've never taken a stand-up class, but I don't think there's any shame in taking one. If you want to learn something, it's pretty normal to take a class in it. Just recognize the fact that it's for beginners and you don't want to stay there, and also be wary of the teacher trying to, just some teachers, sometimes you'll go to a class and like the teacher, like who they are might be based in an old form of stand-up comedy.
Sure.
Like, you're bald, so you're the bald guy. You're fat, so you're the fat guy.
Yeah.
You're the really fat guy. Like, they just kind of take that and be like, that's your voice. It's like, just
Rick, who
take it for what it is.
Funny we're talking about is Rick, who I made the film about, actually has been teaching stand-up comedy at the Comedy Cellar for almost eight or 9 years now.
And he's a stand-up comedian teaching it who's actually still doing it.
And who has, who's worked, really worked in the industry. And it's interesting because he's had students that have gone on to like legitimate success. Shout out to my boy, Charles McBee, who, just wrote for the VMAs and, writes for a bunch of stuff. But it was interesting in his standpoint that it was somebody that like actually did have a career. So it felt like the money side of it wasn't like he's just trying to work kids out of money.
Because it's a little bit different when you're taking a class from someone who doesn't do the thing they're teaching, at least in stand-up, because stand-up, with our debate today, shows that it does change. And so it's nice to be taught from someone who's actively working the road or knows what it's like or has a lot of experience doing that. But I feel like classes, fuck it, take it. Don't let people shit on you, because then you know what? Great, you didn't start, and then you won't ever do the thing that you always wanted to do.
That's true. That's possible. That's a possible outcome of taking a class and never leaving. But I do want to make 2 points. I want to say 2 things. First, we got a super chat for £6, and I don't even know how to say this. 66. It's not cents. What's the euro?
Euros?
Euro.
Or €6.66. What?
Oh,
yeah. What is that? It's not cents.
Yeah.
What is the?
It's cents.
Change? Really? £6.66?
No, because cents is
cents is US. Yeah, it's American.
That's us.
Yeah. Well, anyway, €6.66 or €6.66 from Laurie Mikola says, yes, comedy is funny. If it's not comedy. End of discussion. Thank you, Laurie, and I would agree with that. Now, here's what you guys I think are conflating. Okay, sometimes people who aren't funny can say funny things, or like a form that's not comedic can have comedic moments. Like, for example, Obama or Trump, if they go on a campaign speech, they tell a few jokes here and there, that's for comedic relief. They're not comedians. Red Letter Media did an amazing video recently on The Last Jedi movie that came out. Red Letter Media does the best movie reviews, the best movie takedowns, and they talked about the problem with this movie is that Star Wars is not considered a comedy, but this movie was written like one. There's the same stupid foils of every character. Every character is kind of dumb in this movie.
There's a can you hear me now moment. Remember where he's like talking to one of the guys from the Empire?
Yeah.
He's like, wait, are you still there? It was like one of those jokes.
Yeah.
And I was like, did that really just fucking happen?
Yeah,
there's
so
a bunch
dumb.
of jokes
Like,
that didn't
Jesus
land for
just
me.
horny. And then there was like a BB-8. Like the BB-8 was essentially a MacGuffin in the whole movie. Like the BB-8 could do everything. It had a slot machine compartment that was specifically designed for the size of coin that they went to this weird fucking gambling planet. And now BB-8, I guess, has a machine gun coin launcher. And then BB-8 can also
no way that
engineer-
BB-8 isn't working as like a jerk off robot. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, with all those contraptions,
Yeah.
it's like kind of seems like he missed his mark.
And Red Letter Media pointed this out, but there was this part where one of the ships is malfunctioning, and BB-8 goes in very much like a Looney Tunes cartoon, where you're
finger in the dam.
Yeah, finger in the dam. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like that old gag. It's like this is not Star Wars is not a comedy. So when you try to ramrod a comedy format into something that's not a comedy, it doesn't work. And oftentimes, I think that if they try to ram the other way around, like drama into comedies, that doesn't necessarily work. Marvel movies are
But just
so guilty of
because
this.
something doesn't work in a specific instance for you doesn't mean that it's like shouldn't be allowed ever. You know, like it doesn't work until it works.
I mean, you could make the huge argument that, especially the last chunk of George Carlin's, stand-up specials were him, it's not him necessarily telling jokes per se, right? I mean, you could kind of make that argument. Because to some people, they may consider that stand-up comedy, and some may not. Again, it maybe it does borderline on kind of that TED Talkie type vibe. I mean, for me, I love George Carlin, but again,
just
you
because
can make that argument.
You agree with what he's saying,
right? Exactly.
That's the thing.
Right,
Is a lot of times there's comedians out there where they're very. They're like some comedians where they're like a spokesperson for like a group, and it's like I'll listen to the CD and it's like I don't really think it's funny, but what they're saying people are just agreeing with.
Yeah. Well,
and they're happy that their voice is out there.
So two things. First of all, I'll say that there's a very famous comedian who is absolutely fucking not funny. It's Lenny Bruce. I cannot stand Lenny Bruce. Ron,
you got to put stuff in the context of what it was. I mean, listen, I don't even know a lot of Lenny Bruce, because I remember first watching Eddie Murphy's Raw. The first 10 minutes, I was like, man, he says the word faggot a lot. Like, is this the whole thing?
It's actually in my the clip of that movie. Clip of that is in my movie.
Yeah, it's like kind of like
to showcase like what the 80s were like. Like people do not remember.
Kids said that shit all the time in like kids shows. There was that what's that Monster Squad that came out by Universal with like it's made for kids, and they're saying it constantly.
Yeah.
But Lenny Bruce is just fucking not funny. I bought an entire CD of his, and I swear to God, I gave it a fucking I did a yeoman's job of trying to listen to this thing. I listened to 40 minutes of it, not a single laugh.
I was watching an old Rodney Dangerfield's, and the one night it was on, I was like, oh, maybe it was on YouTube. I was watching it. It was like fucking Dice Man, and it was like
Bill Hicks was it?
Yeah, all these
Sam
people were on it, and I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be amazing. Like, let's watch like people in their fucking prime just doing their thing. Watch it. It was fucking awful.
Yeah.
Every single comedian had a joke about Asians with their squinty eyes and how they were bad drivers because of it.
Yeah.
Like every single one. It was the hackiest shit in the world. And I'm like, these are our fucking heroes? These are our legends?
And now 10-year-olds are making Instagram videos about the same jokes.
Yeah, it's on like, you start to look at stuff and you're like, oh, it's because most stuff people make is terrible.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, but again,
even we were talking about Carlin real quick. Again, look at the audience at the time, because if you go back and watch those, no other time could he have performed and got that same energy from the audience. Where it's like America, it's like literally the equivalent of like him preaching, but like Americans are fucking idiots, and everyone's like, yeah. So a part of it does have to do with the audience at the time and the palette of what they consider funny or not.
By the way, real quick, I forgot Andrew Dice Clay's name for a second, so I said Dice Man, and then in the chat room, JR just went Dice Man. Just like, I knew what I was doing. I was saying, I was like, I shouldn't be saying Dice Man.
Olo in the chat room also says Carlin was just making funny preaches. Yeah, that's true, but again, like he was able to do it. He was able to get it out there and frame it as a comedy. Ultimately, the audience does decide whether or not it's a comedy.
But here's the thing: I think yes, and I think comedy for stuff where people say, "Well, that's just too preachy," is comedy is a way for people to bring up their story, which may make people uncomfortable, and people will actually listen to it. Like like people can talk in a comedy special about something very serious that most people would never listen to if they didn't watch a comedy special. Like a comedy is, it lets people in a way. So I think it allows people to discuss things.
Well, Dave Chappelle. So Dave Chappelle, when he had his like stand-up comeback, right? He did that special on Netflix. He did something that was pretty controversial. He kind of framed the whole. He set up a joke where he said that he wanted to pitch a movie to somebody, some Hollywood executive, where it was about a guy who had a superhero where he could, he could solve any crime, he could stop any crime, whatever. But he had to have sex with somebody first, or he had to like kiss him or something, right? And he said that he was really dead ass ugly, and so he would go around and he'd be like, well, sometimes, to save this group of people, he would just have to take it, and everyone's like, oh shit. He just told a rape joke, and it got him in some heat. Some people, but he was trying to, and I'm not saying I agree with this point, but he was trying to make the point, I think, that people who've done a lot of good can sometimes also fuck up and do some things that are really heinous and really bad. And I think he was kind of referencing a little bit of a tip and a nod to Bill Cosby, because Bill Cosby, he was arguing, had done so much for so many people. He donated so much money. He created black youth programs and things like that, but he's a rapist. And I think that's what his message was, but he couldn't say that. So he had to frame it in this comedic narrative and saying, well, here's another analogy. It's kind of, whether or not you agree with it or not, it's a clever way to make that point without making that point. And he was I think that's what he was tipping his hat towards, and I think that's what a lot of people like disagreed with. Ron, he got a lot of heat for that, right?
Yeah, I remember when that came out.
And also, speaking of like jokes that don't translate and they don't age well, Dave Chappelle is also a product of like the early 90s.
Go watch the early Def Jam stuff. I mean, it's all pretty, not hacky, but you know what I mean? It's for the audience. Part of it's like, Def Jam's a good example where it's like a specific type of comic works within that audience, right? That the Bernie Mac was like the perfect person for something like that in front of like, I hate to say it was like an all-white audience or a different audience. It's probably not going to work doing these like, I'm scared of you, motherfucker, that type of energy. Yeah. Like it may work for one audience, but maybe not for another.
Well, speaking of what doesn't work, so Dave Chappelle, you can tell exactly where his cultural point of view stopped evolving because he made some trans jokes, and I don't think those landed because a lot of people were like,
he got a lot of shit.
He got a lot of shit for the trans joke.
I love the one that his joke where it's like the way he sets it up, where it's like, hey man, come on, we're cutting our dicks off and turning them, into pussies. What? But it's just typical Dave. You know what I mean? If you know Dave, if you know his material.
Well, of course, but it's the first time I'm a huge fan of Dave Chappelle, and it's the first time where I saw some of his material, and I thought, you know what? That's the point where it's like, oh, he's kind of like in a different generation. He comes from a different generation.
Totally.
Like my grandparents' generation. They say things that are insensitive and racist.
It was the first time you realized he was from a different generation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times my whole point is always going to come back to there's so much comedy out there. There's more out there today than ever before because of the ways we can consume it, and so easily. Like if I liked a comic in high school, I would just have to wait till they came up on like 2-drink minimum on Comedy Central. Yeah. Like I just had to wait and be like, oh, I love this guy. And you wouldn't even know their name because it'd just be up for a second and then they would disappear and you go to the next highlight reel comic. Where now it's like, you want anybody, you go to Spotify. Everybody's album is there. Even me, this guy on Spotify right now for free.
Yeah, actually.
Sorry. I didn't know.
Ron's a comedy album.
Forgot about that.
Very well done, actually.
But like, if you don't like something, fucking just don't like it and move on with your life. Like to go find out the comedian you do like. I feel like sometimes people are more interested in shitting on stuff than in enjoying stuff.
Right.
Because it's easier to shit on stuff and it's harder to like come out and be like, you know what I really like? This. Because there's always going to be someone in the room who's like, fuck you, you're wrong. And it's like, I don't know how to tell people that they're wrong for liking something.
Well, I think that's why the Dave Chappelle joke that you brought up is a great example of a situation where, again, somebody like maybe us, where, again, I know who Dave, I know the old Dave, and to me, it's very funny. But somebody in the audience are watching it on Netflix, hears that, and they just it is not funny to them at all.
Yeah, so this is something I've dealt with my entire career. Like, people come at me with hate mail, and the whole reason I started posting hate mail on my website is because it's absurd. The concept of hate mail is absurd. You are sending a hateful message to somebody whose content you don't like. How about fuck off? How about just leave it be? If you don't like something on TV, change the fucking channel.
It's in our. I think the internet showed us anything. It is in our nature. You've seen Howard Stern Private Parts. Remember the scene with Paul Giamatti? He's like, the people that love him listen for an hour, and the people that hate him listen for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the thing. Like, if you hate it, change the channel, change the radio station. You don't have to. Like, it's insane that you have the ability even to contact somebody who has said or done something you don't like. Just don't listen to it.
And you going on about how you dislike something actually amplifies the thing that you don't like and brings it to a bigger audience. So it's wondering, like, sometimes people do shitty things, and I'm like, if you don't say anything, they just disappear.
It just goes away,
But when you amplify it, you, in a weird way, like, legitimize what they're saying as something that should be responded to.
That's something I've actually grappled with, too, because I've always criticized PETA. And it's something that I decided very consciously. I haven't spoken about it in public, but I was going to stop.
The animal welfare organization or the bread?
The animal welfare organization. The bread is just okay, but it's on thin ice. I feel like PETA is a little overrated. But PETA, the animal welfare, the people for the ethical treatment of animals, in the, I guess, early 2000s, or early to mid 2000s, they did a lot of stuff that was kind of attention grabbing. They did a lot of things, like they made pamphlets that were violent, and they would give them out to children and be like, "Mommy and Daddy's a killer." Well, no rational person is going to say, "Yeah, I'm on board with you handing fucking violent material to my child, to my toddlers here." So PETA knew that. They intentionally did that because they were going to try to grab headlines, and they knew that if they grab the headlines, they'll get some trickle of people coming in and looking at their cause and maybe converting to vegetarianism. Well, I realized that a long time ago. I thought, these motherfuckers are saying intentionally incendiary things, and I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of more publicity. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give them I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of more attention to their cause, because I know what they're fucking doing, and it's insidious. They're insincere. They're snake oil salesmen. Anyone can do it. It's fucking easy. You can say the N-word. Get headlines. Mm-hmm. Great. You said the fucking N-word. Then what? Like Alex Jones, there's a debate right now as to whether or not Alex Jones is a performance artist or he's sincere in his beliefs. And it's kind of a toss-up because in court, Alex Jones, for a custody battle, said that it was a performance art, right? But then he goes on he goes out and he confronted Marco Rubio. What's his name?
Yeah, Mark Rubio.
Yeah, Mark Rubio.
Mark Rubio.
Yeah, he comes out across as like sincere. And that goes back to the fundamental argument I'm making in this episode, which is if people can't tell, you're not good at it. Maybe you should stop. If you can't tell you're a satirist, you're not good at satire, and it probably isn't.
Well, what about people who are just in the process of getting good at something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you don't have to publish all your brain farts. You don't have to.
I think that's one of the things is we're publishing every thought.
Yes. You don't have to.
And before there used to be a like there in a way there was a gatekeeper. You have the gatekeepers of getting something on TV, and now there's no more gatekeeper. You want to put something on YouTube, you can put it up on YouTube. And with that, like the floodgates are open. We're just getting a lot of shitty thoughts that would and some
everybody has
beautiful thoughts make it through. Really so beautiful. But with that comes all the shitty ones too.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer is. It's just how it is.
Yeah, you don't have to broadcast every fucking brain fart. You don't have to publish every little sketch you make. You don't have to put out you don't have to serve your guests your experiments when you're cooking.
But even if you want to get big on YouTube, like people have told me this, like YouTube, that its consistency is way more important than quality.
I would disagree with that.
But like there's a bunch of people out there, and I kind of disagree with it too. Like we've talked about this, but like it is like people are like, you rather put out something than not put out nothing. And it's like we're starting to reward people for bad content.
That's a problem I have with YouTube as a platform, and I think a lot of creators do, is and animators specifically, because animation takes a long time.
It takes so much fucking time.
Yeah, but it's some of the best content you can see on YouTube is like a 3 or 4 minute animation that takes somebody months and months to produce.
Yeah, like at least 6 months, especially because a lot of these people are doing it themselves, so they're doing every stage of animation on their own. Yeah. It takes fucking forever.
It's crazy how much it takes over somebody's life where, James, the angry video game nerd.
Yeah.
I worked with him a bunch over the years, and even with him, the amount of he truly just had to map his life, work his life around that. The amount of time and dedication that he has to put into it. It just yeah, it completely changes your life.
Well, guys, we should wrap up this conversation. This has been a fascinating debate, touched on a lot of
So
topics.
where do we end up? That Maddox is pretty much wrong, and we're kind of more on the right side of history?
No, incorrect. I am 100% right. I'll give you a summary. What's your summary argument, Dustin? Does comedy have to be funny?
Well, the one thing that I did want to end on what you were talking about is, even the trolling thing, what we started on with was Drew Michael about not having an audience for his special. Right. Even something like that, or the, Nante thing, it does, as far as the internet of hooking you in, of them selling it, it is kind of trolling you in a way, and that's just kind of what the marketplace is. I mean, it is a really, really tough argument. It's part of it. Look, I know what I think is funny based on my experience growing up and the things. Like, I understand what you were saying about Lenny Bruce. I totally get that.
Not funny. Not. I would even go so far as to say, not a comedian.
Well, but again, that's totally up for debate in terms of being, whatever, revolutionary at the time. That's where the argument can play, because maybe at the time, half the audience did not find it funny at all, especially from a language standpoint of him saying, cunt and cocksucker. But, maybe the other half found it to be, hilarious. But I think at the end of the day, I hate to keep saying, going back to the audience, but part of it too are the comics themselves. Somebody like Gerard Carmichael producing and directing the special and trying to change sort of what the format is. Personally, I find a lot of the specials, your sort of clean cut, sort of these big multicam specials that they do on Netflix. Personally, I find they get a little boring by the middle. They're all pretty, cookie cutter to a degree. Yeah. So with that said, I don't mind seeing the medium evolve. It's not really on me to try to control how that's going to evolve, but I think at the end of the day, the artistic medium it has to evolve. And I think off that point of those old school comics thinking that these new comics in the 70s doing, giving all their material away for nothing was insanity. We may feel the same way that somebody like, Hannah Gatsby, doing semi-confessionals is insane. Which, again, to me, yes, that shit's not funny to me. But again, it's evolving, and part of it has nothing to do with me.
Okay, well, here's something that we didn't really bring up, and I want to end on this point. Yes, I'm giving myself the final word.
So what? I'm not going to get one?
You get one too, Ron. What do you want to say to that?
You know what? Yeah, comedies are supposed to be funny, and the person who determines that is the person watching it.
Okay, I'll give you one of those and also one of these because
it's kind of right.
Yeah,
kind of right.
You know what though, Ron? I'll tell you
much better than I just.
Yeah, let me tell you a hallmark of something that's not funny. Usually, when somebody says that's funny, if you have to say that's funny, that's hilarious.
You know what I noticed? Something is somebody it was a guy on SNL at a UCB show, and he said this hot girl said something like really fucked up, and then he was like, "That's fucked up." He was like, Jason Sudeikis, and he turned to her and was like, "That's fucked up." She's like, "What? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's something where like I feel like people do, like they say something shitty, and then they realize, oh, I went too far, and they're like, "What? I'm kidding.
It's just a joke. It's
just a joke." Be like, "No, you were just being fucking shitty until someone called you out on it."
You got called out. You're just a shithead. And if you have to say that's funny, it's a sign that it's not. Nobody has to point to a car and say that's a car, because you see it. It's a car. Nobody has to point to food and say there's dinner. It's dinner. If you have to tell people it's dinner, it probably isn't. If people come over and you have like a spread of pistachio nuts and olives and crackers, that looks like a snack. If you tell people it's dinner, it's not. People know when they see it. And if you're saying that's funny or that's hilarious, it's not.
You have to say that, yeah.
And the other point I want to make, and this is something that we didn't really touch on, is that sometimes things that are comedy later on no longer become comedy. And I'll give you a perfect example because I was talking about this recently. I did a comedy show, and we talked about what type of humor goes over the line. And there was a bunch of different people who got up and they did different comedic sketches and things like that. The classic tropes to go to if you're trying to find what the line is to go over in comedy is racism, sexism, misogyny, pedophilia. Those are the classic tropes. Well, this one person got up and their joke kind of didn't land because they made a bunch of Holocaust denial jokes. And when I heard that, I just got this feeling in my stomach, and you could hear it in the audience too. It wasn't funny anymore, whereas I think it would have been in the 90s or early 2000s, because today, in this day and age, it's too prevalent. I actually do see white nationalists, and they're getting louder and more emboldened. So when someone's making a Holocaust denial joke, it's like, are you actually denying the Holocaust? Because I can't tell anymore. There's too many people who actually hold that point of view today. You go on fucking Twitter, it's full of fucking, oh, I know, you're not supposed to, Nazis. Oh, they're not Nazis because the Nazi party ended in the 40s. Guys, I understand. Don't fucking condescend to me. I understand the difference between time, okay? I understand that the decades change, but the philosophy doesn't. Neo-Nazis, fine. Let's be real semantically pure here. We don't want to misspeak and use the wrong semantics.
We're neo-Nazis. We're not your grandpa's Nazis.
Yeah. Don't get our generation wrong.
I love that there was a meeting. Hey, guys, we can't just be Nazis. We got to put a new spin on it. What about neo-Nazis? That's great. Love that.
Yeah.
See, someone in the chat room, Anderson Helm, says 9/11 never happened. Kind of funny, but because we know it did, and that's what the comedy fundamentally. And, you know, this isn't like a be-all, catch-all phrase, but fundamentally, one of the tenets of comedy is the juxtaposition of the absurd next to the ordinary. And that's what comedy comes from. So when somebody says 9/11 never happened, okay, he's being ridiculous, because clearly it did. But if somebody says the Holocaust never happened, you have to kind of scratch your head and be like, well, there's a whole bunch of people who just marched in Charlottesville who actually believe that. And there's Iran, the spiritual, not the spiritual leader, but the spokesperson of Iran, Ahmadinejad, just even like 5-10 years ago, was going on and holding conferences to deny the Holocaust. So when you hear that today, something that may have been funny in the 90s because it was so absurd and so ridiculous, or even in the 50s when it just happened, people are like, yeah, the fucking Holocaust just happened and we're celebrating that it's over. 50 years later is no longer funny.
The only thing that I do want to say is, like, as far as comedy, there's no sort of like Encyclopedia Britannica for comedy, right? It's through comics, you know, of those pillars of comedy. A good example, I think, is one of the most ripped off comics of all time, and if not maybe one of the best comics ever, I think, is Dave Attell, personally.
Yeah, Dave Attell's good.
And I also think he's definitely a comics comic in a lot of degrees as well. But it's somebody like Dave who I think is the best example, who can take like the most absurdly disgusting, you know, whatever the topic is, and make that said thing funny.
Yeah.
And again, for myself, and, you know, somebody like Big J Okerson, and you know, I love Big J, but also, you know, he is a Dave Attell offspring to a degree. Even you could say, which I don't like her very much, Amy Schumer is also, you know, in the same, you know, learning from those comics past, and then, you know, them kind of, you know, evolving and taking that on. So there's things, like you said, that may have worked back then from those sort of pillars of comedy that now, I guess that's why I was bringing up that example earlier, that once kind of YouTube kind of leveled the playing field, you know, of not just sort of evolving out of like, you know, Insomniac to Dave, you know, to Chappelle's Show to
lowered
Louis.
Let's use the right phrase, lowered the bar.
Right. Well, yeah, sure. They've pretty limboed it.
Look, guys, don't forget to vote on madcastmedia.com. That's where you can vote on these debates. Also, the voicemail number is at the bottom of every page on the best debate. Call in. We'll play those voicemails. We're going to get to those in just a second, but first we're going to do a recap of the debate from last week. The debate last week, Dustin, was who's the worst person to sit next to on a plane? What type of person would you say off the top of your head?
I mean, it just has to be like a mom, an entitled mom, and like a shitty baby.
Oh, a shitty baby. We didn't have either one of those. Although close, I had families.
Yeah, we had families.
Yeah, we had families.
Because to them, it trumps all. Like, I can't. They put you in a position where you can't complain.
Yeah, it is. It's like they're the first person who's ever had a child.
Yep,
I'm a mother.
That's exactly what it is.
And they also have leverage to get you to move. I hate that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a whole fucking family against me?
Well, it's like the metaphor of the kid kicking your seat, and you turn around like, what the fuck? And then you're an asshole. You know, the kid starts crying, and it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, the fucking piece of shit was kicking my chair. Come on.
Garbage kid. Well, we put the debate to the audience last week, and coming in dead last was my first choice was Taylor. Taylor, the journalist in moderation.
That makes me happy that came in last.
I can't believe Taylor came in last. That's unbelievable. I imagine he'd be really. I've never flown with him, but
no, actually, he would probably be the most considerate person ever.
That's what would annoy me.
Yeah,
like stop it, stop being so nice. Stop it. Can you just be an asshole for like a few minutes so we're all just equally assholes and awful? Then followed by armrest hogs. That was Taylor's choice. So people, you know, who hogged the entire armrest. And then sick people, that was our guest, Christine Littles. But the number one
oh my God,
worst person to sit next to is airplane seat engineers. Ron.
Yes.
But I guess people have it out for
Well, it was more about the people who design the airplane seats. We're having problems with the people who are in the airplane seats. My argument was that the real culprits are the assholes who designed the seat in the first place. We've gotten bigger as Americans. The seat has not gotten bigger with us.
Yeah.
They're the pricks. They're the problem.
That's legit.
Before we move on, I should read a couple more super chats. We got one from Lori Mikola. Says the gay frogs did 9/11, and that's for €6.66. I still don't know.
Nice little
Can
Alex
somebody
Jones
tell us what a euro
right there?
Yeah,
Somebody tell us what a euro cent is.
a euro cent. Yeah, what is the cent portion of a euro? What is that?
This is where
Well, it's
Taylor
probably
was
twice
here.
as
He
much.
would
Yeah,
have,
Taylor would
he would have the
He wouldn't
answer
even
for
need
us
to search.
immediately.
Taylor would have known.
Taylor would.
Right,
Yeah. And then we got one from Pavich Bavin for $5. He says the ghost of Taylor's bladder has transferred into Maddox. Yeah, sorry, I had to take a leak earlier.
It's kind of transferred into all of us, actually.
Yeah, well, this is a long episode, too.
Well, I'm also holding mine because I'm a man, but
Same
if
here.
Maddox needs to take a break,
I didn't even say I have to pee, and I didn't even say I had to.
Wow.
Damn, dude.
Suck on those.
Wow, it turns out this pissing contest became literal. So we should move on to some voicemail. We got a shit ton of voicemail this week. Listen to this. We got some good ones. Here is the first one. So last week we talked about the highest speed roller coaster in the world goes like 150 miles an hour, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty fast. I've only been like 120. Well, here's a caller who called in about that.
120 miles an hour. This is as fast as y'all have ever been. What a bunch of pussies.
That seems like
I mean, I guess we've been in planes and those have gone faster.
yeah. Is that better, asshole?
I guess we are. You're right.
You're right.
I'm a pussy.
Yeah. Well, you know who he is. Douchebag of the week.
I want to know. Call back. How fast have you gone? Because if it's like
Probably like 130.
125, fuck you. It's gonna be like 200 miles an hour.
Even like 200 is what 80 miles per hour more. You still can't perceive that much faster, like in a car. Wow. Anyway, so earlier I teased this caller. He's the most British caller in the universe, and you'll hear why at the end of the call. Listen to this.
Hey, Maddox. I love the show. Hey, Ron. How are you? Yeah, I love the show. Gutted that Taylor has left because I was a big fan of Taylor's. But I'm sure the two of you will... I mean, you'll have guests on and stuff, so I'm sure it'll be a fun... This is a bollocks call. Sorry.
And he apologized at the end, too. Sorry.
Use the word gutted.
Yeah.
Bollocks. I mean,
in proper sorry. You know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a bad call. Sorry.
that was a great call.
Well, here's...
Okay.
You know, I know we all imagine all Brits to be like that, but as having a sister who lives over there are a lot of them who are just really, and I go to soccer games, and there are a lot of them who are super fucking angry dudes, man.
Oh, yeah.
They say the word cunt more than their own last name.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like,
I like it because
crazy.
it doesn't give, again, it's like Scorsese movies where like, if people are openly racist to each other, it like everybody does it to each other, so it cancels it out.
Yeah.
So they say cunt enough that it doesn't,
it
feels cooler than...
There's a lot of rage that gets worked out over there.
Well, it's also a term of endearment. Like in Australia, they say, "Oh, he's a funny cunt." Oh, they'll
Right.
say, people project American, like it's American centrism that they're projecting on other people. It's like,
It'll be
guys,
like you cunt, like in a sassy way, it's like totally just joking.
it's not the same. But I do have this when Lord Matthew was on. I believe the first time you were on this show, Ron,
Yeah, was
with
Lord Matthew, yeah.
And his buzzer was this.
I like that one.
I always hate when people shit on English food. They're like, "Oh, English food is terrible." I'm like, "It's meat, potatoes, bread." Like what?
I like the beans in the mix.
I don't understand like what there is to hate. Every time I go over there and I'm having like shepherd's pie, it's just meat and bread. I'm on fucking board.
Hell yeah.
It's,
Their breakfast look like, it's like eggs, but it always has like the beans.
like Heinz beans.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which
their breakfast is a fart factory. And
Yeah.
you know who would work that fart factory? Paul Flart, who is in the chat room right now.
Hey, Paul Flart.
Look at we get celebrities
Look at that,
and everything.
dude. We got Paul Flart back in the chat room. Welcome back, Paul Flart. Guys, give Paul a follow on Instagram. He's blown up. His app just came out that he posted on the Google Play Store. And I
Oh
believe
my
iTunes
God.
Store.
He has a fucking app?
He has an app. Paul is blown up. Welcome back, Paul Flart, in the chat room. Very cool. Here's another voicemail. So we talked about women's fashion a while back, and I personally was shitting on capris, We talked about that, and we had a caller who called in too, but here's somebody defending them. Listen to this.
Hey, Maddox. I am calling to call out that guy that called in and complained about girls wearing capris.
Caller call out.
guys don't understand. They have it easy. Everything they wear has pockets. We don't get any pockets. We have to carry around these stupid purses that fall off your shoulder and are cumbersome and are huge, and then it's just a mess. So I love my capris. I'm never going to stop wearing them because I hate purses and I like to carry around my shit. So there. Love you guys.
Bravo.
I like that.
I like the earnestness of that call.
No, you know what? She's right. She's like, there's a lot of women's pants who don't have pockets.
I felt her pain of like, for a second being a guy, of like, obviously cargo shorts were like a big fucking thing at the time, and I just
it's just made out of pockets.
It's like literally just a bag, it's a bag pants.
It's like a pocket with holes that you put your body into.
Right, exactly.
And then on top of that are other pockets.
Exactly.
Now, what do you feel about women who put stuff in their bra, like their phone and wallet, keys?
Into it.
I am, but the
pull it
phone
out,
thing makes me nervous because of the cancer thing. Am I crazy?
What?
No, that.
No,
Alex Jones.
You're ruining my boner jams here, Dustin. Because my fantasy is like when they put their phone in, right? It's gonna like their nipple's gonna stick to it, and they pull it out, and their nipple comes out with it. I'm like, yes,
this fucking stuck on nipple. That's your fantasy? Really? There's no other fantasy besides this.
That's it, Ron.
Like a sweaty stuck on nipple.
That's Ron. That's
Is that
all
what
I
you
got.
type into like Pornhub.
It's like when I was in Catholic school and I'd lean forward and my shirt would just stick to the back of the chair, and it was just like I'd have to peel it. Oh my God, I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. If a chick like puts her money or her wallet in her bra and then she hands it to me, I'm like, well, this is like 1 degree of separation, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool, don't you think?
Hey, are you happy to see me, or is that just an iPhone 5 in your tit?
If they hand you their phone, there's like a nipple imprint on it.
You like
that's
smell
cool.
it.
Oh no, this is getting a little weird. A little weird, Dustin. Now you're the weird one.
I know.
Can I use your phone to make a call? No need to take it out.
Here, let me motorboat my number.
You want to use my stylus? That was a dick, right?
Edlin Martinez in the chat room says, "Lol, damn, Maddox has wild fantasies." Thank you. See, at least someone recognized it. And then Pavage Bavin also says, "I almost had a fart attack when I saw Paul Flart in the chat."
And talking about English food. Too.
Yeah, talking about a fart attack. Well, this is a voicemail. We got another voicemail for you, Ron.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, we talked about baby tips, and you said you should fart on the babies to increase their immune system. Well, here's a caller.
Oh yeah,
who has some experience. Listen to this.
Ron, you were on the right track with the whole farting on your baby to boost its immune system, but you're kind of a little bit off. What my dad did when I was a baby is he would come into my crib, he'd squat on me, and he'd take a big shit on my face. And now I can actually bench press like a fucking whole entire house, bro. All this immune system strength has made me invincible. So you better watch out because I'm coming for you, boy.
Oh shit!
Yeah, dude.
Right.
Makes
He's like
sense.
the toxic avenger of shit.
Yeah.
That gave him like superpowers.
Yeah.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, by extension, if you fart, taking a shit is the next logical step. You're going to make your kid a superhero.
Does that happen on the planes too? If you thought the worst person next to you was the fart person, but they were actually they're farting the whole fight, but they actually made you stronger.
One of the best things, one of my superpowers that I have is I have an awful sense of smell. There's so much that you smell that I can't smell.
Really?
So lucky.
It is. Because there's a lot of worse smells. My girlfriend always makes fun of me whenever we're walking down the street and there's a flower. I'll fucking stop and smell the flower, but I have to put my entire head into the flower. My nose has to go all the way down, and so I'm just putting this whole thing in because otherwise I can't smell shit.
So to smell a fart, you would have to
So when I smell a fart, it's pretty fucking.
You got to
bad.
get up in that beehole.
I mean, if I had a schnauzer like this, I'd smell everything.
Oh, I do, buddy. I got one of the first live streams I ever did on YouTube. The first comment was like, "Hey, Maddox, does your nose get wet when you drink?"
Dude, one of the best burns I ever got was I was making fun of girls. I was joking with a bunch of 20-year-old girls about one of them looked 30, and somebody commented, Ron's 40 and doesn't even have hair. Or no, Ron's 40 and still has acne. And I was like, oh. And I got that comment 10 years ago.
Oh, that cuts.
Fuck.
People know, they
10
know.
days ago.
Yeah, they just know how to key into
it,
insecurities immediately.
Sure. Well, we got a voicemail about some stereotypes about Minnesotans. And I would argue that it ends with a Minnesotan stereotype. Listen to this.
Hey, guys. Longtime fan of the show. I was listening to your best debate about female fashion trends, and I would just like to say that I have lived in Minnesota my whole life, and I don't know a single person that says duck, duck, gray duck, and I don't know a single person on Earth anywhere that says bag. It's bag. You put your clothes in a bag, not a bag. So, Taylor Nikolai, I haven't had hot dish in years. I hate the Vikings, and I'm not a big fan of hockey. So, take your little Minnesotan stereotypes, and you know where to shove them, okay?
In your
Love you guys. Fuck Wales.
Do you know what Taylor's favorite movie is?
What's that?
Oh, it's that Tom Hanks vehicle, Big.
Oh, is it what's it called? Is it
Big?
Wait, what's it really called?
Big.
I don't even know.
the fucking movie Big, where he goes back to be a kid.
It's called Big. Oh,
Christ.
Dude, Maddox, I totally thought you were joking.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Oh, there goes Maddox trolling me.
Yeah, I know,
again.
exactly. That's comedy.
Speaking of trolling, Taylor Nikolai in the chat room says the Minnesota caller is a troll. I don't think so, Taylor. I don't think so. I think he caught your number, but it was funny at the very end. He's like, why don't you take your opinions and you know where to shove them.
I gotta tell you, Minnesota's a delightful city to visit.
That's what I've heard, yeah. Oh, no, I've been to Minnesota. It's very cold. I went there in the winter. We got another voicemail. Ron, I think you'll appreciate this one. It's a tip on how to keep your car clean.
Oh, I love tips.
Yeah.
I live for tips.
It's something I personally have done in the past. So
put your tips
Joe
in
from
my
Houston here, Maddox. A good tip for keeping your car clean, whenever you're filling it up with gas, go through and pick up all the trash. Or even better, if you got kids, have them do it. Later.
Dude.
Hey.
On point.
Smart,
That's
right?
what I say to every person who says, I don't have time to clean my car. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing when you fill up with gas?
Yeah.
Are you actually watching the little TV there? No, you just go through, there's a trash can right there. Just like, because otherwise you just drive around in garbage.
Right, just take a handful.
At some point, it's just like, I'm not the weird one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want you to drive around a car not full of garbage.
Right.
Also, that's just dangerous. If you ever get in an accident, all that stuff flies up.
Well, the other thing, too, that drives me fucking crazy, if you're going to have a dirty car, just commit to it. Don't do the, oh, hey, can I get a ride? You ask somebody for the ride, and right before you get in the car, it's like, yeah, I'll give you a ride, but just so you know, my car's really, really dirty.
Yeah.
It's like always they do that all the time, and I'm like, just shut the fuck up. Either commit to the dirtiness of the car. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I would have more respect for someone like, yeah, it's a dirty car. Do you want the ride or not?
Exactly.
It's my car. I do what I want.
Right.
Yeah.
But most people are always self-conscious about.
If they say like, oh, I have a really dirty car, they know that it's wrong, and they're just choosing not to do anything about it. Which I have more respect for the person who's like, yeah, it's a dirty car, man. You need the ride. You want it or not?
Yeah.
You want it or not? I like that.
You can go fuck yourself if you don't.
I find that guys underestimate how dirty their cars are, and girls always overestimate.
Always.
Every time I get in a girl's car, it's spotless. She goes, "Oh my god, it's so messy."
I love doing that. I mean, I drive an old car. I drive a cool car, and it's like I love when people get in. Your car's so clean. I'm like, oh, it's so dirty right now, and I just because then it makes people feel even bad.
You're cleanliness hipster. We got one last voicemail. So I talked about Lemon Party. You've seen Lemon Party, Dustin?
No.
Oh, check it out, lemonparty.org.
All right.
Or not.
Don't.
I was going to clean my car, but
no,
don't
check it while you're cleaning the car. Next
yeah,
time you
why
get
don't
gas, pull it
you
up.
next time you have like yogurt for lunch? Why don't you check out lemonparty.org?
Oh,
Yeah. I also told a story last week about a kid who wanted a lemon cookie on a flight. But anyway, here's a voicemail about that. Listen to this.
Hey, Lord Maddox, it's me. Last week you talked about the lemon party, and this week you mentioned a lemon cookie. I'm on you, man. Fuck Wales.
So there you go, Dustin. Get yourself a lemon cookie and go to Lemon Party. Check it out.
All right.
I think you'll
I'm gonna do that.
Well,
I drink a lot of lemon water. I'm a big fan of lemon water.
Hey man, you know what? Our neighbors have a lemon tree.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty tight. But like it's kind of like one of those things where it's like it's part of the same complex, but it's definitely not on our property. But sometimes we're out of lemons, and then we got to get a little fucking stealthy.
Sounds like Ron's gonna have a lemon party soon, huh?
Yeah. Oh, I have lemon parties all the time.
Do you really?
It sounds like he's been doing it for a while.
I love doing things that make you. I love doing things that you're not doing anything wrong, but you feel like you're fucking James Bond in the moment.
Yeah.
Like I used to compost in Hollywood. I just throw all my fucking banana peels in like this little compost bin, and once a week I would have to go across the street to my neighbor's compost bin and empty it out in there.
Yeah.
We didn't have one in my apartment complex.
Right.
And for whatever reason, every time I was like looking around, making sure nobody's watching me, popping it open and pouring it in, like closing it and leaving.
Ooh, and that feeling when you're walking away.
And it was like the most, for some reason it felt high stakes, even though if they came home, they'd be like, "Wait, what do you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have one. Is this cool?" They'd be like, "Yeah, it's fine." Like nobody would give a shit.
I did that one time and I got caught. I was like putting recyclables in my neighbor's recycle bin thing because mine was full, and they came outside and they were like staring at me. I'm like, "Yeah, mine's full. Is this okay?" They're like, "Yeah." But they said it in a way that didn't sound like it. They were really confident.
But it gives you. I love doing shit like that. Like sneaking into the movies. Yeah. Oh my god. Ugh. You want to feel alive with your lady, just sneak into the movies and then neck.
you lady's gonna have a huge lady boner when you sneak her into a movie. Makes better on.
You use terms like stag party pretty soon.
Try and sneak into try and sneak into an amusement park. That's just fucking hard. Ooh. Can you do that?
Yes. Absolutely.
You are really good at that shit.
Yeah. And you know who else is? He's been on the show, I think it was or
Do you
twice.
talk about that a lot?
Mike Capes.
On the
Not a lot, no. Not a lot. But I am
a lot of people don't know this about Maddox. Maddox is very good at sneaking into things without an invitation.
It's
absolutely fucking crazy.
And I prefer to go to things without an invitation. If I have an invitation, I'm disappointed.
But the amount of stuff that you've gotten in that you've showed me and the ways that you've gotten in, you should sometime talk about.
I think about that all the time, and people have encouraged me to write books and stuff.
It's going to ruin it.
Yeah. That's the thing. It'll ruin it.
Like the things you've done, I've always been like, oh, I guess I've never really thought of that.
Yeah.
And some of it's like super simple.
Yeah, it's super simple. Well, anyway, guys, we should get to some quick news headlines. We got to wrap this up. This has been a long show, long episode. First known omnivorous shark species has been identified. Huh. How about that? An omnivorous shark species.
What is that? They eat everything?
They eat plants. The findings published in the proceedings.
So they eat some kelp once in a while?
Yeah, it's like seaweed and shit.
Okay.
It says the findings published in the proceedings of the Royal Society B. The Royal Society B. Oh, man. Not as good as the Royal Society A.
Yeah.
Overturned the idea that all sharks are exclusive meat eaters. But that's not all. This has implications for fragile and crucial seagrass meadow habitat management, says Samantha Lay, a researcher on the team. From now on, researchers who look after such habitats will have to factor in that bonnethead sharks not only eat plants, but can make seagrass as much as 60% of their diet. The vegetarian diet, however, also consisted of 100% of their dinner conversations because they can't shut the fuck up about them. These fucking sharks.
These vegan sharks.
I feel like they're shitting on sharks for being sharks. Yeah, sharks are eating grass now.
Oh, some sharks are vegetarian.
Like whale sharks don't, you know what I mean? I felt like they were pretty, like it's like kelp and...
are they the mega mouth sharks?
The big ones, yeah, and you see people swimming with them all the time and other fishes like riding,
Are whales omnivores?
Whales are they're vegetarians, I believe.
Whales are vegetarians?
I believe so. Yeah, that's why I fucking hate them. They're so annoying. They can't shut up.
No, they got fucking.
Fuck whales.
They eat fish.
Whales? They don't eat fish.
Yeah, but accidentally, they open their mouth and there's shit that flies.
Yeah, but fucking vegetarians eat bugs.
I saw Finding Nemo. They eat fish.
Whales eat fish.
Yeah,
do whales eat fish.
Finding Nemo. They ate Dory.
Someone in the chat room
get some call-ins on that shit.
If anyone in the chat room is from Minnesota and is quick at Googling, post us this fact checked. But we should move on to the next story. The world's oldest living married couple share their secret to 80 years of marriage.
Fuck it!
Yeah, it's really weird, Ron. You read the story. It says we just fuck every day.
Anal. So, the shit writes itself.
Anal keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
Masao and Miyako Matsumoto are the oldest living husband and wife, and they've been married for over 80 years. Barf.
Sounds awful.
Right.
Did they literally try any other food at the buffet before they chose this dish?
I hate titles. It's just like the fact that they didn't kill themselves is an accomplishment.
Yeah. Oh, and get this bullshit. Listen to this. The key to their 80-plus years of wedded bliss, Miyako attributes it to patience. What a fucking backhanded thing. It's like, yeah, my husband really tries my patience a lot, and I just stick it out.
She basically just said marriage fucking sucks.
Marriage fucking sucks.
But I just stuck with it.
You got to be patient. You got to tolerate the bullshit.
Well, I think that's I mean, I do think that is in a way true.
That is absolutely true.
I do think marriage, for a lot of, it's not all bliss from what I've heard from every person ever got married.
Yeah.
And the successful marriages are the ones where they just stuck with it.
Yeah.
I would say some of the probably unsuccessful ones are ones where they've stuck with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I had this argument with a friend a long time ago. I was making an anti-marriage argument, and I said, well, it's not. It's something that it feels like you're introducing government into a relationship. And
Doug Stanhope has a great joke about that. You and me, baby, we got something special. Let's get the government involved.
Oh yeah.
By the way, talking about one of the best.
Yeah,
he's one of the best.
Yeah. So yeah, it seems like a kind of crass thing. And my friend was arguing and was like, well, haven't you ever been in a relationship where it's about to end and you guys decide to stick it out and you're so glad you did because you worked things out and you work. I'm like, yeah, of course. But none of those have, first of all, none of those last. And also, if you are in a relationship like that, you don't want the threat of the agony of divorce to be the only reason you're continuing this horrible relationship.
It's like filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like.
Oh, by the way, Stan Morris in the chat room said whales definitely eat fish. So, because I'm pretty sure they eat fish.
Yeah, he says they eat thousands of stupid smaller fish.
Yeah, but kelp, or not kelp, the tiny little bit. I've watched Planet. I've watched Blue Planet. I know what I'm talking about. Krill. They eat krill.
Oh, that's right. But krill isn't fish, is it? It's like algae, isn't it?
No, krill isn't a living organism. They're like tiny little shrimp.
Is that what krill is?
Yeah.
Fuck krill.
I know. I'm allergic to that shit.
You know what I wish whales would eat themselves?
Where's my triggered?
You really enjoyed your own joke there.
Is that comedy?
I know. If you throw
Maddox,
your own laugh track.
Sorry, that's funny.
I thought you meant that's funny.
Oh, man. All right.
Oh,
shit all over that one. One last story here. Cambodian reptile cafe slithers into people's hearts. Ugh, this is copy. This is the actual copy from AFP. Says, for anyone terrified of an albino python, an orange corn snake, or a scaly bearded iguana, Che Rady, this is Indonesia, of course, says getting up close and personal at Phnom Penh's first reptile-themed cafe is the only remedy. Oh, really? Is that the only remedy? Lies. Taking off from the cat cafes already popular in the Cambodian capital, Che Rady launched his business I thought this was a chick, to revamp the skin-crawling reputation of lizards and snakes and convince haters that they are simply misunderstood.
It sounds like the copy for like a local news story.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a local Cambodian news story. As customers sip on their lattes and hang out with the reptiles, quote, they will love them like I do, says the 32-year-old to AFP while stroking the scaly neck waddle of an iguana.
Well, it's like cat cafes are really popular in Japan, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I have
We
so
have a
many.
few dog cafes here in LA.
Right.
You know why?
They just took it a step further.
You know why cat and dog cafes are more popular than iguana cafes? Is because cats don't have scaly waddles.
Do you know what's bullshit about the dog cafes though? Is I was talking. My girlfriend and I adopted a dog from a shelter because we're super woke, and. No, but the guy who was doing, he's like, those dog cafes are all right, but every week they come in, they just take the cutest dogs from the shelter and they bring them to the dog cafe, and then you go to the dog cafe and all of a sudden, instead of getting your dog for $50, you're paying $400 or $500 for your dog. They just raid the shelter. Anybody can adopt from a shelter. They just take the cutest ones from the shelter and they mark it up the price, and then they sell them at the dog cafe.
They sell them at the dog cafe.
They go through
business.
They go put them. I think they put them through the health check and fix stuff that needs to be fixed. There's a lot of dogs at the shelter. You're buying a dog who has a lot of fucking problems. Like my dog is made of hernias, so you're just buying a project. But I was like, motherfuckers. Everyone the dog cafe is doing such good work. Yeah. Kinda.
Yeah, I guess. Also, I don't want to drink. If somebody told me there was this cafe and there was a bunch of dogs in there, I wouldn't go there. It doesn't sound clean. It sounds like it's going to smell. And I don't want to drink my coffee in it.
Here's your soup, sir.
Yeah, here's your soup.
Well, there was a dog bar in Brooklyn where you're allowed to have just everybody brings their dog there. That was where I'm drinking alcohol compared to coffee. I feel I have a little dog.
What I kind of like the idea though is if the dog bar has a bartender who's like, "What are you having?"
You mean a bartender?
Yeah. Now that's funny.
Yeah.
That's comedy.
I've done numerous stand-up shows where an audience member just out loud will go, "That's funny," and it is the fuck because you're like I have notes on how you're being supportive. It's just such a weird thing.
Yeah.
But anything you do at a comedy show that puts the emphasis on you rather than the performer, I fucking hate.
Drives
it.
me
That's
crazy.
a dick move.
Just fucking enjoy the show. It doesn't have to be about you for this 5-10 minutes.
Well, that's people's problem. They just can't. I think that's even not to get all into it, but that's part of our conversation that audiences are so entitled to their opinion now that if it's if they don't enjoy it in the moment instead of getting up and leaving.
But it's if somebody in the middle of a movie just stood up and started shitting on the movie,
right?
Everybody would be like, "Hey man, what are you doing? We all paid to see this movie." But somehow at a stand-up club, it's "Oh well, I just it's it's okay," and I never fucking got that.
I need attention. I was
you can have an opinion, but there's a show going on, express it afterwards.
Go blog
the
about
performer
it.
or the manager or blah, blah, blah,
right
in the middle of the movie, just no
one
other people
cares.
are
and at least get to the end. I'm just saying, if you're gonna make that judgment. judgment call, especially if it's like a couple jokes in or what, like at least like let the thing finish.
Oh yeah, especially if a comic's doing something where I remember one comic was called out for doing like a racist joke. And the girl just heard the word, like one word, and the whole joke from the beginning was like an anti-racist joke. And he was trying to explain. It was at a fucking open mic. It was another comic, and he was trying to explain to them like, no, it's against racism, and then just wouldn't let him get through it. And I'm like, God damn it! People are so quick to just get fired up about everything.
Yeah, they're so quick. I was at a show one time where an improviser, a performer on stage, was doing a bit and did a callback, and someone from the audience just goes, "Huh." Nice callback. Like, yeah, we get it, bro. You get comedy structure.
Right.
Just fucking shut up.
Well, it's like wrestling. It's kind of what's happening with comedy because there's so many specials and so many things out there. It's become like what happened to professional wrestling, where the fan became so, inside baseball to a degree that it kind of changed the medium. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, that seems like partially kind of what's happening now is like the fan is like too educated.
Oh yeah. When the fans get involved, that's like when the art is over.
Right.
This is no longer like you're supposed to have a performer and then the audience. And if the audience is the performer or the performance, like The Room was fun to watch when I would go to theater. I've seen The Room probably like 20, 30 times in theaters. And it was fun for a while, but it got to a point where literally you cannot hear a single fucking thing in the movie anymore because everyone's just shouting out all the lines and talking throughout the whole thing. It's like, well, this is no longer equal parts movie and audience. It's almost 90% audience, and the movie can be on or not.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love
the experience changes,
It's fun, but like there's definitely gotten to a tipping point where you can't bring new people to the room because they don't understand. They can't even hear the movie enough to understand what the jokes are.
Well, you're talking about the Westwood screening?
Yeah, well,
I mean that one's pretty like
it's nuts.
Yeah. I agree.
I've seen it there a bunch,
but like there's like I do love The Room, man.
Yeah, it's a fun movie, and I highly recommend. Go to a smaller city if you do. Mm-hmm. Don't go to in New York or LA or anything like that. Anyway, Dustin, where can people?
I disagree. I say go to the one in LA. It's fucking awesome. Yeah,
if you've seen it before, so at least you know what.
Yeah,
what to
I guess
expect.
Maybe okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't take like a first time person to like it's overwhelming. They're like, well, what's the joke? What did they say? Why is she fat? Like why?
That happened to me once with somebody who didn't really know comedy, and I was like, oh, you'd love Bill Burr, and it was the video of like the epidemic of gold digging whores.
Jesus,
wasn't the right one to start with.
You got to prep them. Dustin, where can people find you?
Oh, Sussbomb on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, mostly on Instagram. Maybe at some point, I'll be launching a new video podcast soon.
That's right. We talked about this a little bit. I'm super excited.
Comic Routines, yeah. So you might be helping me out a little bit with that.
So where's the best place to follow you so we know more about where the movie's going to be?
Yeah, Sussbomb. And then you can also follow the actual movie. It's Chrome Doc on Instagram, CROM Doc. And also Oric is also on Facebook. We're also on Facebook.
Oric with an exclamation mark.
Correct.
And so... what's the name of the podcast that's coming out?
Oh, it's going to be called Comic Routines.
Comic Routines. Check it out, and it's Sussbomb on everything, right? So
correct.
Twitter, Instagram.
Yep.
Give them a follow, guys. Thank you again, Dustin,
Maddox.
for joining the show.
SUSSBOMB.
That is correct.
Sussbomb, correct. And before we wrap this up, we got one last super chat at the buzzer from Lori McCullough. Lori, thank you so much for the support for €6.66.
By the way, they said it's Euro.
Euro cents.
Oh, it's Euro
exactly.
cents?
Yeah. So fuck you guys. I was right.
Euro cents. Okay, €6.66. It says try again in the middle of the show. Thank you, Lori.
66 gyro cents? Euro?
Yeah!
Come on, guys. On fire.
Well, thank you again, Dustin, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you to the Rear Admiral of Tangents, Ron Babcock.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But most of all, you're welcome.
I fucked you up.
I went to Lemon Party after last week's episode. I haven't been there in a while. Figure, what those old dudes looked like sucking each other's dicks again. But I was disappointed to find that Lemon Party now redirects to some whack-ass website called Wank From Home. It's the end of an era. Bad times.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, sorry, Dustin, you just got a spoiler. You know what Lemon Party is.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed now. Imagine my face when... All right, I'm glad I didn't have to go. I appreciate that.
Well, you should still check it out.
Yeah, obviously. What do you think I'm doing after this?
Report back.
Yeah.
Hey there. Don't forget to subscribe to Madcast shows on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. Okay, bye.
Madcast Media Network.